Now, joining us tonight to go over all that and so much more, veteran political journalist Dominic Carter, GOP media consultant Bill O'Reilly, who's worked on a number of campaigns, including New York Congressman Bob Turner's current Senate bid, and senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman. Well, guys, this could be a historic day in Connecticut, and we're going to go to the state's capital in Hartford, as that's where they're struggling with this very decision that we're going to discuss tonight. State Senate meeting as we speak over a bill that, if it passed, would clear the way for the state to abolish the death penalty. And to get you caught up on all the latest details in a pretty fast-moving story, Andrew, start us off in first position.
Well, Rich, today's activity really is the single biggest hurdle for the repeal bill, which has been several years in the making, but it's only reaching a turning point tonight. If the Connecticut State Senate approves the repeal, the state's House is expected to follow suit, and it would be signed into law by Democratic Governor Daniel Malloy, who supports the repeal but has not actively pushed for it. Now, that vote could come at any time, but it's moving very slowly in Hartford right now, reportedly for a trio of reasons. One, the head count remains unclear. Still a few senators who haven't indicated whether they'll vote for the repeal or not. There are also questions about what would happen to inmates currently on death row. There are 11 in Connecticut right now. Under the bill, their executions would proceed as planned, though there are worries that those inmates may be able to successfully appeal their condemnations if the repeal bill is passed. That group of death row inmates includes the two men convicted of murdering the wife and two daughters, ages 17 and 11, of Dr. William Pettit, whose heartbreak was covered in depth by RFL and other outlets during their murder trials last October and this January. Pettit joined the death penalty debate today, coming out against the bill that would abolish it. And his efforts may have swayed some on-the-fence lawmakers, Rich. It's still unclear at this point how much influence Dr. Pettit's comments had on that debate, or whether that's throwing a wrench into the movement to try to pass it.
You know, as soon as you mentioned this morning in our production meeting about what was going on in Connecticut, the first thing I thought of was the Pettit family. If there was ever a poster case for a death penalty, that certainly would be it. But we're going to have our conversation here at the table, and in just a couple minutes, I want you to weigh in at home as well on this one. So here's our question, and again, we want you to take part in this. Should the death penalty be abolished? And you can use your own state here as a guideline. We'll get into how each state has different laws in the books. Suffice to say, in New York and New Jersey, they may be there, but in practice, there is no death penalty. But in Connecticut, in Pennsylvania, in Delaware, the death penalty, as of this second, is on the books. So this is how you get involved. Give us a call. Toll-free lines open right now, 888-RNN-CHAT. That's 888-766-2428. We'll get your phone calls as well as your online comments, as I said, in just a couple minutes. But Andrew, let's start there, because there are trends in this country, and we've seen, certainly with the advent of DNA, a lot of soul searching here in state capitals to say, wait a minute here, look what we almost did, or look what we might have done here. Talk about where this thing is going on a national level.
The trends are actually moving away from the death penalty, though the numbers haven't even come close to even yet. As we check a map of the U.S., you can see the states in yellow, 34 of them have a death penalty in place, as does the federal government and the U.S. military. 16 states do not have the death penalty. They're in red. Now, that includes New York and New Jersey in our region. Washington, D.C. also doesn't have a death penalty. And as Rich mentioned earlier, Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Delaware still have the active death penalty. Here's the trends that Rich was talking about. And interestingly, they're all moving away from the death penalty. Since 2007, the death penalty has been abolished in New York, New Jersey, New Mexico, and in Illinois just last year. Now, there are any number of factors that play into any consideration of the death penalty. One of them is race. And you can see here that 34% of all executed defendants are black. 15% of victims in execution cases are black. Those are numbers that are highly out of proportion to the African-American population in the U.S. Also at the bottom, cases where there's a white defendant and a black victim. Since 1976, you've had 18 executions. When it's the other way around, a black defendant and a white victim, 253 executions. In addition, we've got some information about innocent people who have been convicted. You get the information here. It's happened at least 140 times, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. They spend 13 and a half years on death row. The average age of conviction, 27. There's 5 cases a year now where DNA is clearing people on death row. And it gets even worse. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, 8 people, in their estimation, are known to have been wrongfully executed since 1976, and 39 other cases, they say, where it appears as though the evidence indicates that an innocent person was executed. There's also a cost to all of this. It costs up to $3 million per inmate in Maryland to execute an inmate. In North Carolina, $2.16 million. Far less expensive to keep them in prison for life. And as we continue to go, two other things I wanted to show you. One, this is a poll of criminologists taken a few years ago. They asked criminologists, the experts in this thing, do executions lower the homicide rate? Nearly 90% of them said no, it absolutely doesn't. Now compare those numbers to what we get when we ask the general public about the death penalty. And there you see, 6 in 10 Americans, Rich, support the death penalty in capital cases.
And you know what, guys, let's bring you guys into this conversation, and Bill, let's start with you. I think, like a lot of Americans, I'm conflicted on the subject, and I kind of want to have it both ways. I am with the majority. If the death penalty is a deterrent, if that's the purpose of it, it's not working. I didn't need a poll to tell me that's not why we do it. We do it for vengeance, okay? And in some cases, like the Pettit case, if I was in the jury, I'd have been okay with that. Acts of treason, again, I'm okay with it. If you got a life sentence in prison, you kill a guard while you're in there, what are you going to do? Get another life sentence? But I'm picking off examples. I know what Andrew just gave me for data is right. Innocent people are sitting on death row right now that have been exonerated through DNA or have been put to death in this country, and you can't unwind that clock. So I'm against the death penalty, but in some cases I want to have it too. If you were a Connecticut legislator right now, how would you vote?
I would vote to maintain the death penalty, but I have to say that it's absolutely bizarre that Connecticut is talking about this right now. And I've got to feel bad, terrible for Dr. Pettit, who just went through the murder of his family, then went through the trial, and now has to go through this debate. Dose of reality, there has not been a person executed in Connecticut since Richard Nixon was in office. Since 1974. Why are they discussing this now? I mean, they're pushing this death penalty bill out there now, yet it's being discussed. 62% of Connecticut residents support the death penalty, just as you said, which seems to be about the national average. It's I don't think it's a deterrent. I don't believe it's a deterrent, but I believe that society does have a right to express its outrage in certain cases. This is certainly one of them.
Dominic, you okay? Because you saw the same film I did, where we saw there are cases here where innocent guys, when you kill them, they're not coming back. If you find out, oops, we made a DNA error or whatever else. Is that enough reason to say, let's take the ultimate punishment off the books?
You know, I think I'm almost like the same opinion that I've heard expressed here tonight. I'm torn. We know that it's not fair, the death penalty. Let's put that on the table.
We know it's not cost efficient either, and we also know it's not going to scare anybody from doing a crime.
Right. But at the same time, I think that I agree with Bill to a degree in what you're saying, Richard. There are some crimes that are just so outrageous that demands an eye for an eye. The Pettit case. There are just some. I think that if any of us were on that jury, those guys would have received the death penalty.
And then I can make I feel like Sybil here, right? But then I can make the argument, Andrew, that Connecticut seems to have obviously used discretion. As Bill said, you have to go back to the Nixon years to find a case. But then you go down to Texas, where you've worked in that market, and you know when the lights dim in your house, you know you probably got a good guess why. They're frying people, you know, I mean, by huge numbers on an annual basis. So discretion seems to be depending on what state borders you're in.
That's true, and that's one of the problems that I have with it, and that it seems as though there are unequal levels of fairness in how it's used depending on where you go. Texas and Florida leading the pack in executions, but also leading the pack in wrongful executions. When you're in a hurry to get somebody to the execution chamber, you're going to make a few mistakes. And that's where I come down on all this, which is as bad as I feel in cases like the Pettit case, or in cases of treason or things like that, because you can't know with 100% certainty, I don't know how you tell or how you apologize to the family of a wrongly executed person. And because of that, I say don't do it.